Welcome back, parents. Do you get tired of telling your kids to do something and then find yourself getting frustrated when they don't do it? Well, today's episode is our number 2 most downloaded episode of all time. Why? Because Montessori expert Pauline Meert shares with us how to decrease that frustration with a simple 4-step lesson. This episode has personally helped my husband and I with our 3 kids and remains in our toolbox when it comes to teaching our kids new things and helping them to make it a habit. So, if you're interested in keeping this one in your toolbox, we have created a digital guide so you can have instant access to this episode and an awesome printable workbook that'll help you get your kids to do whatever the next thing is with ease. So check out our website for the digital guide called Get Kids to Do Anything on Their Own. The link is in the show notes of this episode too. Now, let's dive into the episode.
The reason I invited you back is because, like you said, when we were talking before, something just was stirring within me about the expectations we have of our kids and how, they don't come out of the womb knowing how to, behave socially and how to do things. And I remember, when my kids were super young, being excited to teach them things for the first time. Right, showing that, even potty training, it was oh, this could be fun for, for the first child. So let me spend a lot of time figuring out, what they need to know, demonstrating, reading the book, watching a video with them about how this goes, all the things that I put in all this effort at the very beginning of my kids' development. But then I think as life gets busy, I noticed that I'm just kind of barking out orders to my kids. And then when it ends up in this massive tantrum, or they're frustrated, or I'm not feeling like they're doing something the way I thought they should, then I'm wait, I don't know if they even know how to do this. So I know you have this whole philosophy in Montessori education on how to go about this a different way than what I'm talking about right here. So share with us, what do you know about what you've observed around parents who, like I said, are frustrated with this idea of my kids aren't doing what I'm telling them to do?
Sure. Well, I think anybody who works with children, parents, teachers, have had those moments because the timeline of the adult and the timeline of the child are both very different.
Yes.
And children their sense of time is completely different from ours. So if we're hey, it's time to rush to school because we got to go, we have a place to be, they're outside of time and space. So they're whatever, we'll just take our time. Or no, I really want to figure out this skill of putting my shoe on. Right? It's going to take me 20 minutes, so figure it out. And we adults can't handle that.
Yes.
So yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, it's just we as adults are very different than the children. And I think, it's a matter of observing, right? And seeing where are those frustrations we have in our lives and why? Just asking ourselves why. Let's be toddlers again and be why to everything. So in the Montessori classroom, we use what's called grace and courtesy lessons. And pretty much we don't do anything until we've gone through those. So the first few weeks of school really focus on grace and courtesy. So what we mean by grace and courtesy is pretty much just the how-to, how to do things, what the procedures are in the classroom. So I'll talk a little bit about what it looks like in the classroom and then share more about what it's like at home.
Yeah.
And interrupt at any time too. But in the Montessori classroom, the children have the freedom to either do what we call works, so the activities. They can do them at a table or they could do them on the floor. If they do them on the floor, they have to have a rug. So before we're not going to just tell them that. We're going to present it. We're going to show them how. So we're going to show them how to carry a rug, because you don't just flop it around. You don't use it like a lightsaber. We try to be very grounded in reality, especially with Montessori.
Yes.
And you're not going to just like, toss it over your shoulder, right? You hold it with two hands. There's a lot of intentionality in how we carry things, how we move. So what I'll do first is I'll stand up, and I do this silently because whether children are absorbing everything, but especially language, especially the younger ones. So if I'm showing a 3-year-old how to carry a rug, and the whole time I'm talking like, so now I'm going to put my hand at the top and my hand at the bottom and hold it close to my chest, and I'm going to have really good posture, and I'm going to walk very carefully. The child's focus is totally going to be all on the words I've said.
Got it.
And they're not going to be able to replicate it because they're just processing language and learning language.
Oh, that's fascinating. For some reason, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, we talk way too much. Just in general.
I bet.
Especially for ages 6 and under, we talk way too much. So I would silently demonstrate this is how we carry it, and then I would place it on the floor. We don't flip it. That drives me crazy. That's one of my pet peeves.
Yes.
We place it on the floor, we unroll it, and then I would show them, now I'm going to show you how we walk around the rug. And then, boop, don't talk anymore. Very carefully walk around it, and now I'm going to show you how we roll it up, and then demonstrate that. So first I present it, and then the children get to try it too. So it becomes kind of a role playing. It's like, can you show me how you do this? And it's very slow and very calm and very quiet.
Yes, actually, as you were explaining that, I recognized in my own body, like I had some tension and anxiety when I was talking about like just telling them what to do and barking out orders. And then as I was listening to you in this process, I noticed the anxiety in my own body just like settle.
Yeah.
This is great. This is a calm way to present a new concept, a new social norm, so to speak, in a classroom, right? How to behave around this certain thing. And then I was like, oh, this feels good to me. I can imagine being a new kid, in the classroom or at home, like, oh, I'm learning something. And there's steps of how to do things. And like, she's showing me with her body how fast she moves or how slow she walks around the... So they have a chance of doing it right.
Exactly. And it's kind of, an easy way to say it, we're just front loading them and we're just setting them up for success. So when we do it with a table and chair, we, like for adults, we might get really frustrated with like the noise of a chair being pushed in. So we don't push them in, we tuck them in. So you lift it, you put it in,
and you lift.
There you go.
Yes.
It doesn't make noise. So it's taking those big things and really breaking them down, because I could just say like, okay, go grab a rug and then do this work. Yes. But then they're going to be flipping it. They're going to be carrying it in different ways because they haven't been taught. They haven't been shown. So like that's just one of the simple examples. But within the Montessori classroom, we'll do it with everything. Mm-hmm. We'll do it with when we pray together, or we might light a candle. And for the longest time, the kids were always like, fire. They would just whisper it. And it drove me crazy. I was like, oh, no, we're like trying to be prayerful and stuff. So I was like, I had this idea of like, let's bring in a new grace and courtesy. Instead of saying fire with our words, we're going to say it with our hands. And so I showed them the sign for fire, and they've never said it again because they've been using the sign language for fire when we light a candle. Don't worry, it's done very safely.
Yes.
And, so those kinds of things. So a lot of it is the day-to-day, rolling a rug, tucking in a chair, interrupting a teacher or waiting for a teacher, asking a friend a question, those like just everyday things, how to get a pencil, how to get a tissue, how to clean up a spill. But then the trick is to just observe, back to, I think I talked a lot about observation.
Yes.
In the other podcasts of just observe and see, where's my frustration? Where's their frustration? Do they know how to put their shoes on?
Right.
Maybe they don't. Or am I asking them to complete a task that their bodies physically can't complete yet in my time frame? So am I asking them to put on their shoes in 2 minutes, but they need 5?
Yes.
So going back to that observation. And then if they don't know how to put on their shoes, let's teach them, right?
Yes. So let's go back and demonstrate that again. They may need that to be presented to them another time.
Exactly. And that's the beauty. So like with grace and courtesy lessons, or, your procedure lessons, whatever we want to call them.
Sure.
There are a couple key aspects to it. So the key is to front load, right? To give the lesson, present the concept before it's needed.
before it's needed. I want to highlight that. Not in the moment, although the moment of frustration is what I'm saying.
Yep.
Although if you get frustrated because you've told your kids, like, hurry up, get your belt on, and you notice they get frustrated and you get frustrated, I think you can stop there, obviously, and go, you know what? I never taught you how to put your belt on. Let's do a lesson right now.
Yeah. Right. And sometimes you might be able to, or sometimes it's like, pull out your trusty little notebook that you're going to carry all the time with you, or put a note in your phone and be like, okay, we need to have a lesson on how to put on a coat.
Yes.
You know?
So front loading, that's kind of the first step is you have to prepare them by teaching them, modeling it for them, maybe having them demonstrate it for you after you've presented it. Is that part of this?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, even before front loading, it's an observation. So first observe.
Yes.
And be aware, too, of what's coming up. Because you might have different events or different things coming up in your day-to-day life where you're like, oh, I've never taught them how to greet visitors. Something like that.
Yes.
But yeah, so first you front load. So the key for front loading is it has to be outside of the moment, right? It can't be, I mean, in the moment you might be able to, like, I love what you said. Like, hey, I recognize you're frustrated, right? Validate their feelings.
Yes.
And then be like, I've never actually taught you how to do that. I'm going to help you today. And then tomorrow, when it's at a different time, we'll try it together.
Yes.
We'll just have some time to just play.
Love it.
You know? And then so let's say, let's go with the jacket example. Let's say the next day you're like, okay, hey, do you remember yesterday it was kind of tough putting on the coat. And you felt frustrated and then I felt frustrated, but we don't have to.
Yeah.
Let's just have a lesson. I'm going to show you how. And so then you can demonstrate, it's like, this is how I put on my jacket. Or you could be goofy and you could be, this is how I put on your jacket. Oh, look, it doesn't fit me. That's so silly.
Yes.
You know? And then now it's your turn to practice. And then this way you've set an expectation. You've set a foundation of this is how we do it.
Sure.
So let's say 2 days later, it becomes a problem again. You're like, oh, do you remember when we practiced together? How did I do it? Can you show me?
Oh, that's so good. It's so much better than we talked about this 2 days ago. Don't give me that line that you already, you don't know how to do this, right? Because that's what you could say in your frustration.
Oh, totally. We've all been there.
Sure.
And, you know, and it's because you're like, no, it's showing that, you know, they have the capacity and they have the ownership. And they're like, oh yeah, I do know how to do it. You're like, you know, it's hard again. No worries. We'll practice tomorrow.
Yes.
Or we'll practice later. And not as a punishment, because it's a quality time. It's a fun time. It's not something like, we're not here to punish each other about not knowing something, right?
Yes.
We all go through moments of forgetting very basic things.
Sure. Absolutely.
So just being able to have that grace with each other.
Yes. That's where that word comes from. Okay. I was trying to figure out how grace and courtesy, just the words in and of themselves fit with this method. And you're saying, just giving your kids the grace to try again without punishing, like you said, underscore without discipline. Like, well, I guess when Johnny is watching his movie after school, you and I are going to have to figure out how to put your coat on again. Right? That would be
don't
punishing.
do that. Yeah, because then you're pulling the child away from you know, so and it does. Then they're never going to want to listen to you when you have your grace and courtesy lessons, you know. And actually, the term for grace and courtesy comes from like the courtesy of, you know, how we talk and how we interact with each other, and grace of, you know, having the patience, but also grace of just movement, you know, because by giving them these skills, they have more control as well. So it's both.
Oh,
which is really good. Isn't it cool to think about? You're like, oh yeah, because if you don't show a child how to walk, you know, in a straight line, they're not gonna.
Right.
You know, and how to, like, one of the lessons we do often in the Montessori classroom is walking on the line.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone who's watched children at any time in life, you'll see if there is like a line somewhere or a little row of bricks, they're gonna walk on that.
That's so true.
Like, that's just a human need to walk on something narrow. And it's their way of learning how to control the body and how to have poise and grace. Anyway, I
love that.
But yeah.
So that's the part of the body control that Grace is talking about. You are demonstrating to them in different situations how to move your body in a way that's going to help with whatever it is that you're engaging in. So if it's walking in a straight line, or I know I was just at the pool with my kids the other day and I had a flashback from my own childhood of the lifeguard blowing the whistle super loud, pointing at you directly and saying, walk! And it's like, ooh. But if no one ever tells you, why do you walk on the cement next to a swimming pool, or show you, like, and validate, I know you want to run, buddy, from the bathroom to the pool because you're so excited to get back into the pool. And like, bodies are awesome. Like, we can beeline it and make it there in 2 seconds. But we want to walk in this manner. This is how we walk at the swimming pool because it's slippery. It's, these types of things can happen if you're running on water. And so it just kind of triggered me to think, like, yeah, how many times we as parents probably just, yell out, like, don't do that, or stop running.
Yeah.
When we have never demonstrated to a child, even in our home, like, hey, your body can do all kinds of wiggly, cool, fun, crazy things, and let's do that together, you know?
Yeah.
But then when we're walking in the kitchen and there's hot things on the stove and we're moving around, it's really great to use our walking feet. And this is how we walk in the kitchen.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I mean, as you were talking about the pool as an example, it's like, have a grace and courtesy lesson where we're going to play a fun game and we're going to pretend we're going to the pool, but we're just going to be at home.
Yeah.
But we're going to all put our swimsuits on.
Oh, how fun.
Yes. So it's something that's fun. It's just a good time. You're like, and I'm going to pretend I'm the lifeguard and I want to see how you walk so carefully so that you don't slip or somebody else slips.
Yes.
And then you could even have a whistle and just be like, oh, I'm watching, I want to see how you're doing it, of just, it's just a fun time. It's just a fun time to role play and enjoy being as a family. So observe, front load.
Yes.
And demonstrate. So, go through those motions. And also adapt to your kids, whatever age they're at. Because for the 6 and under, less talking is best. Okay. As they get older, you can kind of dig into things more. And as they get older, you can even have them be more part of the lesson. So like if you're doing a lesson on how to walk at the pool,
yes,
you can have the 6-year-old demonstrate for the 3-year-old.
Oh, right. I love that.
You can have the 10-year-old,
yes,
say, well, here's what happened. So this is what I did, kind of having them demonstrate too, or having them share a story of one of their experiences at the pool or something like that. So it can really bring everybody in.
Yes, that peer-to-peer teaching where they feel like, hey, I've kind of crossed that threshold. I know about this, and I've been there, done that, so I'm going to share that with my brother. Yeah. And you're engaging them in that way so that they can learn from each other and make it a whole family activity.
Absolutely, and then you're meeting their needs where they're at.
Yes.
And then, do it. Live the experience. Go to the pool.
Yes.
And if it happens perfectly, that's awesome. Celebrate together. You're like, hey, I noticed our grace and courtesy lessons really helped us. We totally had a great time at the pool. What did you think? Get that feedback too. And if it doesn't go as planned, it's like, all these things went really well, but I noticed this was a little bit harder. What did you notice? That's okay. Let's practice it again. Because we need the repetition as humans. We need to do it again and again and again. So rug rolling in a Montessori classroom, you practice that all year. You do it especially at the beginning, but it comes up again and again. And that's okay. It's part of the human experience.
It's not a one and done.
Exactly.
Isn't that, this is stirring up a lot for me because I feel like when you teach your kids something for the first time, you kind of maybe put that extra time in it. You do what you're saying is you kind of front load them, you demonstrate it for them, you allow them to do it, but then you forget that part of following up and checking in. Like you said, go out and live out the experience at the pool. And then when you come home, the next time you get together or you have that 5 minutes with them right when you get home, just do a quick review and say, hey, how did you guys think we did?
Yeah, exactly. Before you even give your input.
Yes.
Right theirs. Yeah. And then, in the moment, you can always say, hey, don't forget where we practiced.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember how we did that? Can you show me?
Yes.
It's okay to do that in the moment too, because by doing the grace and courtesy lesson, you're establishing an expectation. This is how we behave. This is what we do. Because half the time, they have no idea what our expectations are.
Yes.
And honestly, sometimes we don't know what our own expectations are.
Totally.
We're like, yeah, we're going to go to the pool and it's going to be perfect and it's going to be fun. And then we come home and we're like,
that was
never again.
Right. What were we thinking?
Why would we ever leave the house?
Summertime. All of a sudden, all the extreme thoughts come, right?
Yeah. So I think we also need that structure. We also need to know what our expectations of our children are, and especially based on where they're at in their development. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much grace and courtesy.
Yes.
So pretty simple. Observe, front load, demonstrate, do it, follow up.
Love it.
There you go.
Again, something that
repeat.
Keep repeating. And with different activities always, right? New things that come up. It's not just like...
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a whole list of examples of grace and courtesy lessons you can do.
Absolutely. We'll include those in the freebie that we give out for the Tuesday weekly email newsletter. So if you're listening to this, you've got it in your inbox now, and that way you can kind of have something to review, because I was thinking of that. Maybe as a parent, if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, what kind of lessons do I need to be kind of going over with my kids? Because maybe I've expected that they know how to do these already, but I've missed some, and that's why we're having such, points of contention or, meltdowns, or I'm feeling frustrated on these certain days. It turns out that's Sunday because I never told them how to behave in church or whatever. We never walked through all the behaviors and expectations and practiced that. So definitely I love the examples. But another thing that's kind of coming up for me is just this idea that, I don't know, I'm losing my train of thought here because so much it's awesome when we have these interviews, but because it sparks so much for me personally as a parent, but then also what I've observed with other people, And so I guess one of the things I was thinking of is just, if you feel like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to follow up, after I demonstrate something and we go out and live the experience, because we're then going on to something else. We're going from the pool to Costco, and then we're going from Costco to this. I think a good place and time to review some of these things would be at a weekly family meeting.
Perfect.
Right? That's something we do every Sunday evening. I've talked about it on tons of my podcasts, that from 6:30 to 7:30 on Sunday evenings, we rally together, we look at our calendar, we figure out what's coming up. And that was something that you said at the beginning, like, hey, one way to figure out what kind of grace and courtesy lessons you need to give is just by being aware of what activities you have coming up in the next week.
Exactly. Yeah,
right?
The family meeting just makes it so much more simple, right? Because you have that time to look at what's ahead. So yeah, I think that's exactly it. That's perfect.
So just, hey, we got swim lessons coming up. You know what? We haven't been in swim lessons since last summer. Okay. If that's on Wednesday and it's Sunday night, we can tag that into our family meeting right there, right? Like we can just do a little lesson there and demonstrate it. And then at the next family meeting, if you haven't followed up, guess what? You can look back and go, what did we do last week? Oh, we did swim lessons. How did you think that went, guys?
Yeah.
Right?
What do we need to work on?
Yes.
Let's pretend it's swimming lessons now.
Exactly. Get your swimming down.
Yeah, and I think the weekly meeting is just so key in making that possible, because then they're also involved. And I think adding the grace and courtesy lessons is just adding a little extra.
Yes.
A little extra spice to make things simpler and hopefully smoother, right? Of just like, this has been an expectation we haven't talked about. Let's review it.
Exactly.
Let's learn it.
And I know that everybody listening wants to, be an intentional parent and to put thought and plan behind the developmental stages of their kids and what's going on in the here and now. And there's the reality of like going and doing and keeping up with your work and, being at home and taking care of the household and pets and all the things. And so we have to be realistic, right? Like, okay, maybe we're not going to, at the stage we're at right now, be able to do all of these 4 or 5 steps in one beautiful, hour session, right? You
Sure.
teach it, you demonstrate it, you go and practice it, and then you follow up. Might not be, it's probably not most people's reality.
No, and grace and courtesy lessons should take 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
They don't need to be an hour long. It's, they don't need to be complicated. And actually, I'm glad you bring that up, because another aspect of the grace and courtesy lessons is you want to keep them focused on one concept at a time. So if you're going to do a grace and courtesy lesson on how to walk at the pool, about the pool, you're not going to do, well, first we're going to talk about how to put on your swimsuit, how to walk, how to do this, how to do that, and then how to leave, right? You're going to have to break it up.
Oh,
and
good to know.
And you're just going to do one thing at a time. Hey, before lunch, we're just going to practice, like, what is walking like at the pool? Because we want to swim.
Right.
But to get to the pool, we have to walk too.
Yes.
So what is that like? Then, and after lunch, I'll show you how we leave the pool. Because that's also really hard, right? It's like, when I say we've got 10 minutes or 5 minutes, so that, that's just your heads up, and it's going to be hard. And inside, you might be like, oh, I'm so angry, I don't want to leave the pool. But that's okay, you might feel that.
Yes.
But when it's time, you can tell me how you feel.
Right.
And say, well, I'm angry, I really want to stay. I'm like, I get that, I'm with you, I want to stay too, but we have to go to Costco, or we have to go home, because we're all tired.
Yes.
So then the next step is going to be, we grab our towel, and then we collect our things. We go clean up in the bathroom and change, and off we go.
Yes.
And the beautiful part is we can come again. Because I think leaving anywhere also needs a grace and courtesy, right? Because
leaving transitions, are you kidding me?
It's so hard.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. Grace and courtesy can change your transitions.
Yes.
It's I really hope it's life-changing for everyone, because as a teacher, it's so necessary. It's so foundational to everything we do.
Yes, if you're needing to leave a place and you're upset, it's likely because you love whatever you're doing or that place, right? And you want to, if you could stay there forever, you would, But just validating that, I like how you said that, just break it up. Don't teach the whole, like, soup to nuts, in 10 minutes of how to get to the pool and get back and everything in between. But to break it up, and then next time you go to the pool, maybe you focus more on, the leaving and how we're going to do that, a little countdown and all of that. Because, again, this is coming up for me. I'm thinking, oh no, I'd go through the whole thing, like start to finish. Yeah. Here we go. Like
that's our top mind,
right? Because maybe, and that's not even good for us actually as adults. Yeah. But we force ourselves to learn things in that way sometimes, where it's just like, I got to figure this all out today, instead of let's just take it in chunks and process it and try that first and then move on.
Totally. Yeah. No, I think the beautiful thing that I've learned, and I'm still learning with Montessori, is that, you go into it for the children, but really you're going in for yourself, because it's such an enlightening, an unveiling of the human tendencies and human needs. And, I'm still human, even if I'm an adult.
Exactly.
Or trying to be an adult.
Exactly. We should have the same, grace and courtesy lessons for ourselves and our spouse and our friends, and just, give them a little bit of patience, and
right.
Maybe they don't know that when you come over to our house, you take your shoes off or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so don't expect that they know and then be upset at them.
Exactly. That's a great example, actually. And actually, for family meetings, you're going to need some grace and courtesies of how to have family meeting.
Totally.
If you don't agree with something someone said, or how are you going to interrupt, or are you allowed to interrupt, or how do you wait your turn?
Mm-hmm.
What are those, ground rules, so to speak, that you have as a family for, I was going to say classroom meetings, but family meetings.
Yes. Classroom is your jam. That's where you spend your time, right? So would you mind going into a little example of the interrupting and modeling for them, and how you
that's a good one. I think that one's really important. So in the Montessori classroom, I get to teach one-on-one with the children versus teaching to everybody at the same time.
Okay.
But because of that means I'm not available to all the children at all times. So if I'm giving you a lesson, let's say you and I are learning letter sounds.
Yes.
Right? And let's say Johnny really wants to talk to me.
Yes.
And he wants to ask me, or, what my favorite color is, or to go to the bathroom, whatever it is. If he sees you and I focus on a concentration, on a lesson, we have concentration, we're focused, he would learn to put his hand on my shoulder.
Okay.
Actually, first he would learn to go talk to someone else. If he sees signs of concentration, like, okay, I'm not going to interrupt, I'm going to go talk to my assistant, for example, might be available, and things like that.
Right.
Or if he really needs to talk to me, he can put his hand on my shoulder and just wait quietly. And then what I usually do is I put my hand on his hand to acknowledge that I know he's there.
Oh, I love this.
And occasionally, if I know it's going to be a long time, I might just gently take his hand off without breaking eye contact with you, because you and I are doing the lesson.
Yes.
And I want to really respect and honor this time we have. And I'm going to do the same with him when he and I have a lesson.
Yes.
Then he knows what that means, right? Because if I don't teach him what that means, if I don't have a grace and courtesy lesson on this is what this means, he's going to be like, well, rude.
Right.
My feelings are hurt. Like, ouch. You know, like, so then he knows. And if I know I can get to him, I'll hold on to his hand. I'll finish up with you and be like, yes, Johnny, what do you need? How can I help you?
Yes.
And then I can come back and bring my attention back to you.
So the lesson with Johnny is, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's kind of our process for when I am in a conversation or focused with someone else and you need me, which I can totally see moms being like, yes, I need a formula for how to handle the situation, right? Because you're talking to your friend and your kids are hitting you, pulling on your shorts. They're, mom, 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 mom. And what is the reaction? Stop. Not now. But there's no, like you said, there's no lesson prior to, and so they're just left going, when am I going to get my need met? When am I going to get my need met? I don't know how long your wait a minute is going to be, because your minute seems like an eternity to me as a child.
100%.
And I'm guilty of this. I'll be like, okay, yeah, we'll go in a minute. And then I get to talking to my friend. We're going in a minute. Well, it's been 15 minutes. And so I think what you're saying is just coming up with that lesson and saying before you're in that situation, and if you anticipate you're going to, be in lockstep with your friend in the conversation, and you're really just, tuned in, that you give them a little lesson before you go.
Yeah. And I mean, the interrupting and waiting, that should just be for all the time, because you might be on the phone, that's just something to practice. And that's one to practice regularly.
Okay.
Because that's really helpful in public. That's really helpful at home. It's really helpful with other people too. But other people might need hey, this is what that means. Because they might not know, why is your child putting their hand on my shoulder or on my hip? What's that about?
Yes. Yes, great point.
But just a fun tidbit. One of my good friends, he was a Montessori child. So he went to Montessori school as a kid, and he still puts his hand on his mom's shoulder. He's a grown adult.
Yes.
But and I do that myself too now. To other adults of I've learned to not interrupt as much. I'm very good at interrupting.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, it's a gift. Well, not really.
It's a curse and a gift.
Yeah, there you go. It's so yeah, it's been just a really helpful tool for me as well. No, I need to notice with my eyes what's happening in front of me, and when I notice that, it tells me what to do. Either I wait, or I place my hand to say, hey, I want to talk to you next. So that one is just gold. And
yes.
It's really helpful.
Like you said, it's a life skill. You need it multiple times throughout the day.
And your whole life.
Yeah. Where every relationship involves you needing someone's attention and them not always just being ready and waiting for you, right?
Well, yeah, and I think something to talk about on here too is it might look different for different families. I had kids who would grab my elbow, and I was like, oh no, I just can't do that.
Okay,
don't
fair.
grab my elbow.
Yes.
Or you might, moms have little hands on their bodies all the time. They might not want a hand on their body.
Sure.
So it might be you just grab my pocket.
Yes.
Or you just, just some kind of tool to let me know that you need me, but to also respect that I'm finishing up a conversation.
Yes.
So to have both.
Right.
And I find what works best for you.
I would guess that you don't want them clicking 3 times or something like that, because you're teaching a child that's disrupting us. That's so distracting that we lose, right? That's a distraction. So the gentle hand on the shoulder, or if they're really small, maybe it's the hips, so they're not trying to climb up and find your shoulder. Okay, yeah. I love this stuff.
And repeating it and practicing it again. And I had another thought and I forgot it. That's okay. I'll come back.
This stuff is just, it's so good, and it brings up different personal examples and examples from the community. You mentioned something about, giving a lesson to your kids about how to greet people when they come over.
Yeah.
And it's yes. You wonder why you feel upset when you've had people over and you're like, where were you? You didn't engage our company. It's well, I didn't know I was supposed to, and I don't even know how that goes, right?
Right. We teach the children how to shake hands, how to look each other in the eye, and how to talk.
Yes.
We shake with the right hand.
Yes.
But they don't know that until we practice it.
So true.
And so it's kind of just one of those things. I think something that came to mind when you were talking to was timers, because children are this is kind of a little bit of a tangent, but children are outside of time.
Yes.
Until they're about 6 is really when time starts to make more sense.
Okay.
But using sand timers, hey, I'll get to you in 2 minutes and get one of those little sand timers, turn it around, and that helps you as the adult, and then it helps the child too.
Yes.
So I'll be with you in 2 minutes. Or if you're chatting with a friend, with an older kid, you'd be like, hey, can you set the timer and let me know how long I was? Because I'm not sure how long this conversation is going to be.
That is awesome. Yes.
You know, like, so use, timers are just great. They're one of my favorite tools. And because they offer children that framework of what time is, because they don't have it themselves yet.
Yes. And so when you say timer, to me, a timer, like a sand timer or something that counts down where they can see it changing, like in space, or the number actually counting down, is better than just like at 10:45 we're going to leave and it's 10:30 and you have a digital clock on the wall and they're like, I don't know, it doesn't give them the visual of like the amount of time 15 minutes is or whatever.
Well, that's going to work great for a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old, you know, be like at 10:45. But before that, having the visual is very helpful. There are lots of different tools on, you know, Amazon or whatever that are easy to find. But but like an older kid, you can like, how about you time me? Let me know how long my conversation was and my phone time me.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. So if you have little kids, maybe an idea would be to have some analog clocks around your house or a sand timer on each floor or something of your house, to something that's visual for them to start getting aware of time and how long things take. And
totally
love it. It's good stuff. This is awesome. And it seems like a simple strategy, right? Like, well, of course you teach a child how to do something, you show them, and then you let them do it, and then you circle up and make adjustments. Like if they need another lesson, you do that.
And it's so simple that sometimes we're like, how did I not think of that? And I think a lot of times it's because we didn't necessarily grow up that way. We weren't necessarily presented things. We were expected to just know and to just get in line, you know.
You're so right.
And so I think like, if you haven't thought of it, that's totally fine. And actually, most parents probably already do this in their own way.
Sure.
You know, so it's both and.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes, I think just a gentle reminder, you know, if your kids are in the like middle age and stage of, you know, 10 through 15, you feel like you've gotten over the major humps of like, you know, getting them to walk, talk, potty train, you know, do all those kind of first milestones. They still need these lessons. There's still a huge chunk of information that they haven't been given yet. There's still so many experiences that they haven't been exposed to. And like, we are called to be the primary educators of our kids, you know? And so this is one way we get to live that out as parents, is to be a little teacher to them. Yeah,
what if you did a grace and courtesy lesson for, you know, an older teen, not with the younger children, just with the older teen, of like, you go to a party, somebody offers you a drink.
Right.
You don't know what's in it. What do you do?
Exactly.
You know, pretend you're at a party together. I don't know.
That's right.
Just, you know, why not?
Yes, instead of hoping that they do the right thing, or just telling them, hey, if somebody does this, you know, asks you if you want to, you know, ride home and they've been drinking, like, just say no. It's like, no, let's just actually walk through that. Let's role play that, right?
Well, and especially if that's something they've grown up with. If this is a brand new thing in your home, and you try to role play with your 15-year-old, they might not be up for that.
Awkward.
But if that's something that's always been part of, you know, your life, then it's a little different. But again, as they get older, it might be more of a conversation than a role playing exercise. But again, it goes back to those family meetings, because that presents the opportunity for those conversations.
Yes, I love the idea too that the family meeting, you know, as kids are conditioned to participate in these and like expect them, and it's just part of their, you know, the family rhythms, and every Sunday you're doing this, or whatever day of the week you kind of choose to do this, you know, they can come into the meeting with a little list of 1 or 2 things that they go, hey, I ran into this, let's chat it out here.
Exactly.
Because they know they have your time and attention at that particular time. Maybe it was 4 days ago, but they could come prepared with questions then, and you would give them time for that, right? Like, this is a place to do that. We're ready, we're attentive, this is what we expect in this moment. I'm not cooking dinner and listening to a podcast while you're trying to ask me this, right? Yeah. So Good stuff. Okay. Yeah.
I just remembered the thing that's so important.
Tell me.
Sorry about that. So if we're teaching children how to interrupt and how to wait, not how to interrupt, we're really how to not interrupt.
Right.
We need to do that ourselves too. So I think that's also a very important key is we need to make sure that if they're talking with their friend, we're not just barging in. We're also showing them the respect that we're asking them to show us. So obviously, different situations, but, if your child is reading a book, respect that.
Yes.
And wait, and give them the time to finish. And if it's bedtime and everybody's in a rush, well, tomorrow just practice your bedtime routine all over again and do some grace and courtesy around that. But I think, with any grace and courtesy lesson that we present to the children, we need to make sure that we're holding ourselves to the same standard. And if not, have the conversation of why it's different for us. Because yes, there are things that for adults are different, and that's okay. But having that
and
respect.
I love that, and giving them permission. Well, I like to do this anyway. I don't know, I guess how this sounds if you're listening, and this isn't something that you're used to, but we love to give our kids permission to call us out.
Sure.
On things and we make it fun, where it's like, hey, we got to make our bed every morning. And if I don't make my bed and you glance past at noon on a, Wednesday and my bed's unmade, call me out, because I need to be doing this. Right. So I think I love that. Like, you're teaching them, you're modeling for them, you're participating and practicing with them, you're circling up to see how did that go? Do we need to make any adjustments? Does there need to be another lesson? And then, I'm working at this too. Yeah, I'm human. I interrupt too,
Oh, and they will. I mean, because you have the grace and courtesy lessons, they are going to call you to a higher standard too.
Yes.
Because they're like, no, this is the same for you and I. And we see it all the time in the classroom with peer-to-peer, but also with the teachers. They're like, Miss Pauline, you forgot to walk. Or you're like, you're right, I did. Thank you for reminding me.
Yes.
So, and having that grace.
Exactly.
And courtesy with each other.
I just love even the feeling as I'm hearing you, explain this. Like, you know what? Yeah, I don't get offended when you call me to task. Like, we are our brother's keeper. Like, we want to help, right, our friends and a family be the best they can possibly be, right? So part of that is correcting each other in a gentle way.
On the same page because we've all had the same expectation presented to us.
Yes.
So then it's like, oh yeah, of course, no big deal.
Yes. So. Oh my, I could talk for 5 hours about this. Because it's just what our kids need. It's something that is practical.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's simple. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Yes.
It really doesn't. But do you want me to share some examples?
Yes, share some examples before we wrap up. I love it.
So yeah, some examples. You mentioned church. So church is a really good one to practice. And then other ones, like how to walk, how to run, where can you walk, where can you run?
Yes.
Apologizing is a big one. And so that's going to depend on what your family expectations are. If your family is like, just say you're sorry, then practice how to do that. If you want to do more than just say sorry, you want to have reparation, like what does that look like?
Yes.
So really, and I think it's also great for parents to work through these together because you're allowing yourselves to create what is the culture we want to have in our family. How do we do these things? Another one would be putting on shoes, doing the laundry, going to the grocery store, story time, or even how to use a book. Because children, especially the younger ones, need to be shown how to turn pages at the corner instead of in the middle. Because if you start to notice library books, they're all ripped in the middle. Because that's not how to turn the page of a book. So you silently, you put your finger on the page, you slide it to the bottom corner, and then you turn.
Oh gosh,
super simple.
Small things.
Or how to put a book away. Even just that can be sufficiently challenging.
Yes.
Some other ones would be like how to answer the door or how to answer the phone. You might not want your children to open the door until they're a certain age. But share that expectation with them. Practice, this is how we do it. Or this is how we look through the peephole to see who's at the door.
Yes.
If grandma's calling, how would you answer?
Right.
Would you say, hi?
What's up?
Yeah, exactly. No, let's have that poise. How do we answer the phone? How are we these full, gracious humans?
Yes.
nighttime routine, greeting each guests, cleaning a spill, cleaning up after a meal, or setting the table. Where does the fork go? Where does the knife go? You know?
As you say, cleaning a spill, I'm thinking, outside of a Montessori classroom, I wonder if any parent, before a spill happens, says, we're going to practice spilling something and cleaning it up.
Oh, it's so much fun.
It would be amazing. It would be so much nicer to control the environment of a spill. Have that calm, right?
Yeah.
Demeanor.
Yeah. Show
them what to do, what we might want to clean it up with, but what we should clean it up with.
Exactly.
Right? And then, hey, guess what? You're going to spill like a bazillion times in your life, because I'm 44 and I've spilled a bazillion times in my life. And you know what's cool? You know how to handle this.
Yeah, and just have a basket of cloth. And hey, sometimes we make a spill. And,
this is where it is.
You can show this to, as young as 2 years old. Now, the problem with 2-year-olds is they love water, so they're going to make the spill on purpose for a very long time.
Yes.
But let them if you can, because they're learning that skill. And once they learn it, once they master it, they'll move on. It's a phase, it's a period but it's a need that they have that's really important.
Yes.
How to load or unload the dishwasher. How to blow your nose.
Oh, wow. Another thing where you're you don't teach them until they have some slime hanging out, and you're like, oh my gosh, get that.
Just Google it, look online for the Montessori way of blowing your nose. Kids as young as 2 can do it. Have a mirror at their level for them to practice. It will change your life.
This
because
is
we
awesome.
just walk around and we just wipe their noses, or they do it and then it's up to their ear, or they sneeze and then it goes down to the ground.
Yes.
I've seen things.
Sure.
So that's a big one. Hand washing, getting a drink, walking around something. Children will go through very klutzy phases because they're learning how to use their body. So you can even have an obstacle course. You're I'm going to have a glass of water on this table and we're going to practice walking around it so that the glass doesn't move. Well, the water inside the glass doesn't move or doesn't tip over or anything like that.
Yes.
Crossing the street would be another big one. So those are just some examples. And then another big one would be sharing.
Yes.
How to share.
Okay.
What does sharing look like? And sharing is a topic I can talk about for a very long time because we all do it wrong. So that's just my teaser for you. But yeah, what are your expectations? Do you get 3 minutes with a toy and then you have to pass it on to someone else? Or if somebody asks you for something, you have to give it up right away?
Right.
Or do you say, I'll let you know when I'm done? What's your culture around sharing? What's your expectation?
To be continued. That sounds like our next episode.
That one's a big one. There's a lot to talk about.
So much, because even as adults, we are called to share.
Sure.
Right? And in marriage, that's exactly what we're doing. We're sharing
Absolutely.
our life with another human, blending these two, become one. And there's so much sharing and compromise. And do I give this up? Do I?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That's another episode for sure. We got our next content.
Pretty much in the end, the list of grace and courtesy lessons that you can do is endless, because how to go to the zoo.
Yes.
How to sit in a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
How to eat food somewhat properly.
Yes.
In the classroom for a while with the kids who say, oh my goodness, during lunchtime, would your mom and dad eat like that? But in the game, as a kind of a joke, it's do mom and dad slurp their milk at the restaurant? Is that where you learned it? That's so funny.
And they're like, what?
Wait, no, they don't.
Right. And they're probably thinking, okay, now I got to observe my mom and dad and see if that's how they do it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. We don't put our feet on the table.
That's
just
right.
little things like that. But based, again, back on those lessons and having those clear expectations.
Yes, this has been wonderful. A good little grace and courtesy lesson here, just in what to do and how to do it, right?
Yeah.
It's just a lesson on the lesson. I love that. So I just want to kind of recap what you said. So first, observe what is it that your child needs to know and needs to learn, and then front load them with the skills. So you're going to demonstrate how to do what you're asking them to do in a calm environment before they need those skills. And then you're going to do it with them. And then you're going to circle back and do what I call kind of a after action review. so to speak, right? Like,
Yep.
how did that go? And then making any adjustments. And then just being willing to repeat that process with anything that is new to them that's coming up on the calendar, maybe even just in the next 48 hours, right? Just take a glance and, okay, we've got 2 new experiences. We can follow this 4-step process, this grace and courtesy lesson. And I want you parents to reach out and tell us if you're implementing this, how this is going for you and how this is changing the dynamics of your family life. Because I imagine it's night and day. The decrease in tantrums, the level of confidence this builds in kids because you're not criticizing them and nagging them to do something, right? They're doing it on their own. This is just magic right here.
I really think it is. And I would love to hear what grace and courtesies you implement. You know, like another one that comes to mind is like how to buckle in the car, you know, but like
True.
What comes up for you? You know, I'd love to hear from parents of like, oh yeah, once we figured this one out, how to go to the library. I don't know. Again,
Yes.
this is endless, but I'd love to hear
That would be
the
great.
creativity. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Anyone who's listening to this, we want you to send us a message at hello@familiesofcharacter.com. That's the email you can send us, or hit us up on the social channels, Facebook, Instagram. You can go to our YouTube channel, Families of Character, and let us know how you're implementing these 4 steps, these grace and courtesy lessons. That way we can share them with our parent community. And speaking of parent community, we have a private group on Facebook called the Thrive Community by Families of Character. So if you're not part of that, go there and jump into the group so that we can talk about these things and support each other and build each other up and share resources. Also, I mentioned earlier in the show, we are our brother's keeper. We are the primary educators of our kids. We want them to be the best version of themselves. So one of the tools we have in our shop is our newest kids journal called The Best Me I Can Be. So check it out. It's for kids in that stage of about 6 years old to 11. And it's got all kinds of awesome little stories and questions for them to contemplate and talk about with you. And so this can be a great way for you to bond with your child and also kind of get inside their mind and see what they're thinking about and imagining, and maybe even will give you some insight into some of the things that they are anticipating coming up in their lives, but need some grace and courtesy lessons around so that they can be properly prepared. So check that out in our shop, The Best Me I Can Be journal. Pauline, thank you.
Thank you. This was such a treat. It's always just a joy to chat with you, and I hope this is helpful. And if anybody has follow-up questions, you're always welcome to reach out to me as well. So.
Okay, how would they find you?
So you can find me through SophiaMontessori.com. So SophiaMontessori, or even just the by email at info@SophiaMontessori.com. So
wonderful. Parents, you've got this. Think of the next grace and courtesy lesson you want to engage your child in the next 24 or 48 hours, and go for it. Try out this method and let us know how it goes.
And have fun.
We'll catch you on another episode. Thanks, guys.